All right, let's get into this incredible story that absolutely blew up online. It's all about a simple website named AI.com that kicked off a global media frenzy with just mind-boggling sums of money and a story that honestly seemed a little too perfect to be true.
So, this is the number that started it all. 600 crore rupees. That's about 70 million US dollars. It's the absolutely staggering price that the domain name AI.com just sold for, and yeah, that makes it one of the biggest domain sales in history. Now, the fairy tale version that everyone heard was this. A domain bought for just a few hundred rupees, basically the price of dinner, somehow turned into this massive, life-changing jackpot 30 years down the line. I mean, the return on investment is it's almost unthinkable, and you can see why it caught everyone's imagination.
So, the story we were all told starts way back in 1993. We're talking dial-up modems, the very early days of the web. And apparently, a 10-year-old kid in Malaysia uses his mom's credit card to buy a domain. You have to remember, back then, the internet was this niche thing, not, the center of our entire world. And the story was just so simple and perfect, wasn't it? This 10-year-old kid, Arsene Ismail, supposedly sees a domain that just happens to match his initials, AI. He buys it for $100, holds onto it for over 3 decades, and then, bam, sells it right when artificial intelligence becomes the hottest thing on the planet. I mean, what a story. Incredible foresight, or just the luckiest person alive.
And because it was such a perfect story, major news outlets all over the world just ran with it. But, as this quote from Boom Malaysia points out, maybe there's a little more to it. The story was so good, it just spread like wildfire, without anyone really stopping to check if it was, true.
And that brings us to the big question, the one that turns this whole fairy tale into a really fascinating investigation. What if that story we all heard, the one about the lucky kid, what if it isn't what really happened at all?
So, let's do it. Let's break down what really happened. We're going to compare the story that went viral to the actual documented facts. This is where we start peeling back the layers of the myth to find the truth, which it turns out is actually just as interesting. Okay, and this right here, this is where that fairy tale completely falls apart. Public records tell a very different story. First off, AI.com wasn't bought by a 10-year-old. It was registered by a U.S. company. Second, paying for something online with a credit card in early 1993, that just wasn't a thing yet. And maybe most importantly, the domain was owned for decades by a big investment firm, long before Arsene Ismail was ever in the picture.
See, the real story isn't about a lucky lottery ticket. It's a high-stakes, absolutely brilliant investment flip. It's a story about sharp business moves, perfect timing, and really understanding the value of digital assets.
So here's the actual timeline. After being owned by corporations for decades, the domain was sold to Arsene Ismail in 2021 for about $11 million. He then turned around and sold it just a few years later for $70 million. That is not a 30-year-long shot. That is an incredible flip for a nearly $60 million profit.
And this whole thing is a textbook example of what's known as domain flipping. This isn't about getting lucky. It's a professional investment strategy. You can think of it just like buying and selling real estate, but instead of land, it's for prime locations on the internet. Buy low, wait for the market to get red hot, and then sell high.
And make no mistake, this was a professional deal from start to finish. That 2021 purchase, handled by a brokerage called SAW.com. The final $70 million sale, brokered by another industry heavyweight, Larry Fisher. These are major players, which just confirms this was a calculated, high-level business transaction.
But wait a second, how did the value jump that high, that fast? Well, that brings us to what you could call the redirect wars. After buying the domain, the owner used it in this really clever way to build up hype and drive that price through the roof.
Instead of building a website on it, the owner basically turned AI.com into a piece of playful trolling in the tech world. It was like a digital billboard that kept changing, pointing to whoever was the biggest name in the AI game at that moment. And it sparked endless speculation. So first, it pointed to ChatGPT, and everyone thought, oh, OpenAI must have bought it. Then suddenly it flipped to Elon Musk's XAI. After that, it was Google's Gemini, and then even a Chinese AI company, DeepSeek. Every time it changed, the media went crazy trying to figure out who owned it, which was basically free marketing that made the domain seem even more valuable.
So, why? Why is a simple 2-letter domain name worth so much money in the first place? I mean, why is AI, followed by .com, worth more than a private jet?
Think of it like owning property in the best part of the busiest city in the world. There are only 676 possible two-letter .com domains, period. Most were snapped up decades ago by huge corporations. They almost never go on sale, so when one does, especially one as perfect for the times as AI.com, the price just goes to the moon.
And this chart really puts it all into perspective. The old record holder was carinsurance.com at just under $50 million. AI.com didn't just break that record, it absolutely smashed it. It set a completely new standard for what a top-tier, category-defining domain is actually worth.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, for one, the real story is almost always more complicated and more interesting than the viral one. This wasn't a lottery ticket, it was a brilliant business move. It also proves that the value of these premium digital assets is just exploding. And finally, it shows that a good story is an incredibly powerful tool, whether it's true or not.
And that really leaves us with one final, kind of thought-provoking question. The fairy tale version of this story was way more popular than the real one. So, in an age where narratives can be created and spread in an instant, what is the actual price of the truth?